Hello and welcome everyone to this review. And again we take on another retro game from the old days, when the world was a little bit more simpler. So what is in store for us today? Well, a role-playing game from the States. It was developed by Gas Powered Games and published by Microsoft in 2002. You command a group of adventurers throughout a medieval fantasy world and fight some evil, the usual stuff. But enough of that, grab a shovel and prepare your fireball, because it is going to be epic. Our adventure begins with a nice little introduction on how peaceful it was for the past 300 years. But of course this cannot last any longer and we need some plot devices. So our homeland gets wrecked by the Crooks, one of the main enemy in the game. After the death of an old friend, we leave the farmlands to set things right and fulfill a dying wish. If you ever wanted to play something similar to Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, then look no further, because this is really the unofficial game to the movie, or book, whatever you prefer. Dungeon Siege features a linear type of journey where you travel from one place to the next and often have to overcome a dungeon. Sometimes you meet some friendly faces that can join your cause if you like. Your final goal is to reach the castle of Ype and save the king. There are also some side quests you can do, but most of them involve to get to the next town. Nevertheless, this is a game that focuses more on the journey, which is thankfully not interrupted every few seconds with scripted cutscenes and dialogues, like you would get in modern games. While the journey itself is pretty linear, the areas you visit are mostly wide open and invites you to explore every corner of it. Especially the dungeons can sometimes be like a maze where you can get lost. It also features some nice horror ambient from time to time. Some of the monsters you fight are very sick looking, and the places itself can also be very creepy. And this brings me to the major selling point of Dungeon Siege, the atmosphere. Because believe me, nothing can ever come close to that feeling you get after fighting yourself hours through a dungeon, make it finally back to the surface and be greeted by a completely new environment. And you know that the next town will not be far away, where you can finally lay down your burdens.
Our hero emerged from the wilderness with a message of warning for the Overseer, and a spirit strengthened to endure the travails that were yet to unfold.
Control-wise, this game is not that complicated. You command your heroes around with a mouse. The camera is always locked on one of your characters, which also means that from time to time you will have to fight some camera issues when an object is getting in your view. Your party can be set to specific behaviors like holding the ground or engage the enemy, but for the vast majority of this playthrough I just commanded my warriors and let the rest of the party auto-follow me. This ensures that the more fragile members of your fellowship stay behind and can bombard the enemy with spells and arrows. Killing monsters will earn you experience, and the leveling up system is fully automated. You just use the weapon or spell you have in hand, and by doing so you are leveling up that class. There are 4 types to choose from: warrior, archer and 2 magic schools, combat and nature, with their own unique spells. There are no special techniques or skills you can perform in combat, but there is some variation with all the spells you can find in the world. Your wizard guy will have a spell book in their inventory that you can fill with new stuff you find or buy in the world, but besides that, it will be just clicking on the enemy and hoping for the best. There was one problem I had with gaining XP regarding healing spells. While they are very useful, you don't get much XP out of it, which results in your healers being very much underdeveloped in the later parts of the game. On the surface, Dungeon Siege looks similar to other games of its genre, primarily slashing your way to monster hordes and finding new equipment. With that said, several things make it stand out from the crowd. For example, there is no teleporter that brings you back to the city. You cannot just refill your supplies whenever you want, which means that you better spend some damn time in the next town you visit, because you won't come back to it after all. So make sure you got everything, especially potions. You will need them a lot. The merchants in this game are very important and you will spend some decent time going shopping. Unlike in other games where these guys are usually just there so you can sell your junk and never have anything of interest to offer, the merchants in Dungeon Siege are the real deal and sell some great stuff. But keep in mind that in the first half of the game you will always have money problems, so you have to think a little bit about what you want to spend your coins on and what not, be it to hire new companions, fill up your rations with potions, buy some new spells for your wizards, or spend it for new equipment. Sadly, you can't have it all, and once you go out of the town, the next one can be like 3 or 4 hours away, so really make sure you got everything you need. With that said, the inventory system could have needed some improvements, because it gets a bit tedious to buy stuff for every single person in your party. You can't compare stats from your own equipment to those that the merchant is selling, and when you try to fill up your rations with potions, you have to manually click on every single flask. An option to buy a specific number at once would have been much appreciated. To help you on your long travels, you get the opportunity to buy yourself a mule that is not very effective in combat, but can carry around a lot of items that you find throughout your adventure. While it is possible to open several inventory screens at once to trade items between your party, keep in mind that everything will get much tinier by doing so, especially when interacting with your mule. The reason for that is the UI doesn't scale on higher resolutions, so everything becomes much smaller. Consider that if you are planning on playing this game in 4K or even beyond. But make no mistake, while this game is easy to understand, it can also be very tough from time to time. Enemies will hit you hard, you will drain through your potions like nothing, and your characters will find a lot of stuff that they can't equip because they don't meet the minimum requirements. In general, the balancing needs some serious retweaking, because it definitely can get unfair from time to time. My pro tip: save a lot. Some encounters in this game will really fuck you hard. On the technical side, this game might look old for you, but I think it still has some charm to it. Arana, the world you are traveling through, is very immersive, and the game designer spent some excellent work on crafting all the different locations that always set off the right mood. And the best part of all this is that people rarely mention when they talk about this game every scenery you visit, every dungeon you go into, and every city you enter happens seamlessly. There's not a single loading screen to be found here, except of course the one you get when booting up the game. There's always a perfect transition to each area, often with the help of an elevator to get back to the surface when completing a dungeon. For a game that came out in 2002, this is really impressive. I mean, games are still coming out today where you get loading screens for even entering a fucking house, but not here in good old Dungeon Siege. And let me tell you, this game features some really excellent locations to explore. You travel to the snowlands, for example, which are just beautiful to look at. I like how when you reach the mountainside that a blizzard starts appearing that reduces your vision, while you have to find the entrance of a giant ice cave. But I have to admit, I just love snow levels in general. Later, you even visit a swamp, and I have some serious love and hate relationship about this location. A positive thing is, this is probably the most open area in the whole game. There's so much to explore and secrets to uncover. The atmosphere is one of the best you get in your whole playthrough, but on the other side, it is insanely hard. you can't see much and will encounter some witches which constantly summon some demons to fight, and when you try to engage them, and they will just run away. Directly after that nightmare comes another difficult area in the form of the goblin factory that you have to invade. You fight against robots with flamethrowers and even tanks. They are pretty tough and do an insane amount of damage. One area here in particular made me almost rage quit the game. You get on an elevator where in the end a whole goblin army is welcoming you with open arms. Fuck this shit. And one thing I really have to mention is the ending, because there is none. I'm serious. After beating the final boss, the game just throws you back to the main menu. But this is not how it's supposed to go down. You see, when the game was re-released on GOG and Steam, they somehow fucked up and removed the multiplayer portion of the game along with the ending cutscene and didn't even bother to fix that. You can solve that issue by yourself by downloading some fan patches, but for a product that is sold online, I really think that this is something the publisher or developer should do by themselves. I mean really, get your ass up and fix this shit. This is unacceptable. But let's get back on track here. What is also quite surprising for such an old game is the physics engine. Because yes, this game has one, and it isn't really the type of genre where you would expect something like that, but it is still appreciated and nice implemented. Every arrow and spell you cast at your enemy interacts with the environment, so when you throw bombs at your foes, then these have a chance to miss their target and bounce off the wall or even fall through a window. I also like how some enemies, like these flies here, will explode into 1,000 pieces when destroyed. But the cherry on top on this cake is a godlike soundtrack which has been composed by none other than Jeremy Soule, who you might know from the Elder Scrolls series. The tracks are just beautiful and epic to listen to. The only complaint I have is that some of these are way too short. And that's it. Besides the ending and some balancing problems, this is an absolutely fantastic game, and Dungeon Siege is huge. It will probably take you over 20 hours to complete, but if you are a fan of these type of games, then these hours will fly by in no time. I can really recommend this to any hack and slash fan out there. It is still a very special game that did its own thing instead of emulating the success of Diablo. And with that, have a nice evening everyone, and maybe until next time.
Who are you then? Another of that short goblin cuss's errand runners? You tell that little green snotball I don't have any high and mighty magic staff, and I never did. I don't traffic in exotics, and even if I did have one, I'm not gonna go trudging through the eastern swamp looking to sell it to some damn foreigner. Now, if there's anything else I can get you today, maybe I'll consider not tossing your ugly butt out into the snow!